Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode here on European Confessions. The following story that you're going to be listening to, it was sent to me by one of our dear brothers. Quite a sad story, quite a sad story. The message reads like this. Hello, Brother Nashi, how are you? Can you please post my own story as hidden identity? So I got married the second time. The reason as to why my first marriage failed, I think it is because I got married to a woman who was a little bit older than I was, and she had 2 kids and I didn't have a child. So when I met her, I was already in South Africa. The problem that happened to me is that I went to South Africa when I was still very, very young, and I didn't have the opportunity to get a woman from Zim. Each and every time when I'll be back home for the holiday season, then most of the girls that I'll end up dating, these girls, they'll end up playing with my heart. When I returned back to South Africa, that was when I met this lady who was new in the location where I was staying, but she was from Zim. The problem with this lady is that when I got married to her, she had already started dating other guys in that same location. So the problems that we were facing and the challenges were that whenever me and her would have a disagreement, then she will rush back to her ex-boyfriends and she will complain to her boyfriends, and she will say that I was actually the one who was wrong. So when I saw that this lady, she was not serious and she wanted to continue speaking with her ex-boyfriends, that was when I took that decision to just stay alone. As for my relatives, they had said that I should return back home and try to find a woman back home in Zim, but whenever they would get someone for me, later on I'll find out that the lady will be cheating on me as well. And then when I returned back to South Africa, I then started dating my current wife. As for my current wife, at the time when I started dating her, I never thought that we'll end up getting married because we used to fight a lot. But I quickly understood that what was happening to my wife, it was something spiritual. She had been given this spirit of anti-marriage on her. So when I started dating her, usually what would happen is that when she would be at the place where she was working as a stay-in maid, she would actually tell me that she was missing me a lot. But when time came for me and her to be together, then she will start to insult me a lot and she would fight with me a lot. And this situation actually got so bad that my own relatives suggested that it was far much better for me to get married to her, to pay for her bride price. Maybe things were going to be better. But when there is a lot of spirits that are involved, even if you pay the bride price, but still it is still going to be quite challenging. Before I had gotten married to her, I visited this other white garment prophetess. When I went to her at that time, this new wife of mine, she didn't want anything that had to do with God. So that prophetess said that I want to give you some prayers. So the way that these prayers were going to work, I was not supposed to tell her. I had to use these prayers without her knowing that I was actually using these holy prayers so that we could transform her heart, so that her heart can start thinking about the Lord. What I'll do is that whenever she would come to my place for a sleepover, I would actually place one of those stones that they use in the white garment churches underneath her pillow. There was this other Friday when she came to my place. After she had came to my place, I then went with her to that prophetess house, and that prophetess started to pray for us. And then the prophetess told us that what was happening to my new girlfriend was that she actually had that spirit of anti-marriage. But since she had been told that a child back home in Zim was not okay, she wanted to rush back to Zim. And when she was going to come back, wanted to cut off this other thing that was growing out of my wife's back area. She has this pimple that actually grows out of her back area. So that prophetess told me that the thing that was growing out, it was the representation of that spirit of anti-marriage, and she had been given this spirit of anti-marriage by one of her relatives, but she said that I cannot tell you the name of that person who placed this spirit of anti-marriage in your wife's body, because if I do that, the way that this altar was created, the moment that she will go to church, and if the prophet will tell her the name of that person that created this altar, then there will be a monitoring spirit that will report back to that relative of my wife who had made this altar and done this covenant so that my wife can have the spirit of anti-marriage. I later found out that my wife's auntie, she was the one who was behind all of these evil things that my wife was going through. When my wife was still in primary school, she had been invited to the auntie's house, and the auntie gave her a plate of soft porridge and meat. At that time, when we went to visit that prophetess, after she had sent me to Spar to buy some lemons, honey, as well as some other stuff, she cooked everything. And when my wife started eating, she then started vomiting. She didn't vomit the things that the prophetess had given her to drink, but she actually vomited the soft porridge that she had eaten when she was still in primary school. This soft porridge, it was still in her stomach. After she had vomited everything, things got a little bit better, but we used to fight a lot. When we returned back to Zim after the Lobola negotiations were done, we returned back to South Africa, and things were quite better. That I actually praised the Lord, and I said, Lord, you are really wonderful, because my life was now getting much better. We moved out of that location, and we were now staying in another location where there are not a lot of people. So we actually had a 2-bedroomed apartment that we were having. So there was this other night when we came back in January, Brother Nashi, when my wife was now pregnant. I returned back from work. My wife at that time, she was no longer working as a maid because her pregnancy, it was actually making her to be so sick. So I would go, so I went and I spoke with my wife's boss, and I told him that I was asking him. I then went and I spoke with my wife's boss, and he then gave her a sick leave. So my wife was always staying at home. I was the one who would come and do the dishes, the cooking and everything. But on that day, it was quite different. When I returned back home, my wife was just sleeping in bed. She was really sick. I started doing the dishes. I washed, I cleaned the whole house. By the time that I finished doing everything, my wife had fallen asleep. But as for me, I could not sleep because of the other things that had happened when I was in the bathroom. When I was in the bathroom, I felt that there was someone that was with me in the bathroom. And when I looked up into the ceiling at the corner of the bathroom, I saw that there was something that was quite black in color. This creature, it seemed as if it was a bat or it was a rat. I kept on looking at that creature until it suddenly vanished. It just disappeared. And the ceiling in the bathroom, it didn't have a hole or any space where this creature could have hidden itself. I just thought that it was really weird. I went to bed with my wife. When I went to bed, Brother Nashi, I kept on feeling that there was something that was wrong. So that prophetess had actually given me some fat that had been taken from a sheep. So I always kept this fat somewhere else in the house. On that night, Brother Nashi, I looked for my matchbox, but I could not find it, because that prophetess said that if you have any spiritual encounter, I want you to take this fat that has been taken from a sheep, and I want you to burn it so that the smoke can go around the house. It will chase away the evil spirit. I looked for the matchbox and I could not find it. I then went to the kitchen, the other room that had the fridge, the couches, as well as the TV, where we used that room as the cooking area. I left my wife. She was asleep in bed, but the way that she was asleep, I could tell that a spiritual battle was taking place. She was not okay at all. I then placed that piece of the fat that had been taken from the sheep on top of the stove. So it then started to melt. Then the smoke filled the whole room. When the smoke filled the whole room, I saw something that I never expected to see. My wife's auntie, the one that we had left back home in Zim, she was sitting on the couch and she was naked, Brother Nashi. I saw her with my own two eyes. The moment that I had this spiritual encounter, I really felt scared. And when I tried to run away, I then hit the kitchen unit so hard, I then fainted. And at the same time, that was when my wife, who was pregnant, woke up from the bed. She got the strength, even though she was feeling weak because of the way that she screamed. Later on, my wife told me that when I was busy looking for the matchbox, wanting to burn the fat that had been taken from the sheep, when I felt like I just needed to let it go, my wife said that if I had not burnt that fat that had been taken from the sheep, she was going to die. She only regained her strength when she heard me screaming. That was when she woke up. But what she didn't see is that her auntie was sitting on the couch naked. She had flew all the way from Zim, coming to give us this spiritual attack. After this spiritual encounter, we then spoke with my wife's father. My father-in-law then informed us that we were not supposed to tell any of my wife's relatives. My father-in-law said that we just need to keep it as a secret until when we would have returned back to Zim. Then we are going to visit some traditional healers so that we can know what is really going on. This spiritual encounter that I had, it still scares me a lot because I saw my wife's auntie, the one that we had left back home in Zim, sitting in our living room, just sitting there on the couch, and she was naked. As for that prophetess, she has since passed away. Remember that time when she had traveled to Zim so that she can be with her child who was sick. She was supposed to return back to South Africa and she was supposed to pray for my wife and to remove those sort of like pimples that grow out of my wife's back area, the ones that she said that they are a result of the spirit of anti-marriage. Those are the things that makes my wife to be so stubborn, because of those pimples that grow out of her back area. And she could not return back to South Africa because she passed away. She had an accident. When she arrived back home in her village, she took her kids. So they were traveling using an ox cart. So then that ox cart hit a large rock and it overturned. When it overturned, the whole ox cart came crashing on her skull and she died on the spot. This is what happened to that prophetess. This is the spiritual encounter that I had, Brother Nashi. Witchcraft, indeed, it is real. Dear listeners, right there was a message that I received. It was sent to me by one of our dear brothers, and we had to try by all means to give you this translation.